Peace, everyone. Welcome to another free lecture from the Barter and Build Think Tank. I'm Geechee Motivator, and today we're talking about not-for-profit, but still exploitive. So if you have some friends and family who work for nonprofit, who's thinking about doing a nonprofit, make sure you share this video with them. For YouTube watchers, thank y'all for coming through. People on Facebook, again, thank y'all for coming through. At the end of the lecture, we will have some dialogue so you can ask Q&A. Brother Asafo will facilitate that Q&A at the end of the dialogue. So again, not for profit, but still still exploitive. Some reflections on the non-profit industrial complex. All right, brother. So as I said before, our think tank is consistently putting out content, and we do free lectures. We try to do at least one every month. We don't ask for any money. This is free for anyone who's interested in information. We do take donations. So if you want to support us in any kind of way, you can cash app Geechee Motivator, or if you want to connect with us in any kind of way, you can email us at barterandbuildthinktank@gmail.com. So let's get into this dialogue. Next. All right, so before we get started, I want to give a quote that we made up at the think tank. So throughout the think tank, we are studying, we're coming up with social theory, we come up with different quotes. And one of the things that we want to make clear, we don't believe that you can fight or save people from capitalism with capitalism, nor will ameliorating their conditions solve the actual problem, right? So we want to get that clear out the door. So go ahead, next slide. And I want to start this lecture off with definitions. Make sure that we have the same definition and we're talking the same language. So the first definition is neoliberalism. It's an ideology that is predicated upon the belief that the maximization of social good requires locating all human actions in the domain of the market. This ideology demands governmental non-interference in a market understood to follow a set of natural laws that direct the market towards its continual expansion. Normally expressed in the anti-big government rhetoric in the United States that has its early origins in the fiscal year or fiscal reforms in the 1970s under the Reagan administration. So when you hear about this neoliberalism, it's normally targeted towards indigenous people saying that, oh, you shouldn't need the government handouts, you shouldn't have the government handouts. And you know, black folks, we internalize it and perpetuate some of that silly stuff, not knowing or not understanding that the government affects everybody. And in fact, the government helped build middle-class white America. So this neoliberalism is this concept of trying to orientate us not to, say, depend on or interact with the government. The next definition is economic justice, a component of social justice and welfare economics. It is a set of moral and ethical principles for building economic institutions, where the ultimate goal is to create an opportunity for each person to establish a sufficient material foundation upon which to have a dignified and productive and creative life, right? So economic justice is the thing that we want to focus on. So think about economic justice and think about neoliberalism. I want y'all to know those two definitions as we go out through this dialogue, because remember, most of the social issues that are created by our current conditions, these nonprofit industrial complex or the nonprofits are out to solve these things. And very rarely do they focus on economic justice. So let's go to the next slide. A couple things I want to get out of the way. So when you think about neoliberalism, right, and people saying, oh, you don't need the government, you need to just do your own thing in the market, right? And we talk about economic justice, you know, people say, oh, we don't want nothing from the government. Sometimes they have this idea of, well, we could do it on our own, right? And so I want to make this clear. Black capitalism is not self-determination. Right? And so I want to pull on some three of our ancestors, Fred Hampton, Francis Fanon, and also Martin Luther King. So one of the things that Fred Hampton once said was, we got to face the facts that the masses are poor, that the masses belong to what we call the lower class. And and when we talk about the masses, I'm talking about the white masses. I'm talking about the black masses, the brown masses, and the yellow masses too. We've got to face the fact that some people say you fight fire best with fire. but we say you put out fire best with water. We say you don't fight racism with racism. We're going to fight racism with solidarity. We say you don't fight capitalism with no black capitalism. You fight capitalism with socialism. So I want to give y'all this analogy, right? Imagine your house is on fire. Your house is on fire, and you have this brother come up to you and say, well, you know what, your house on fire. In order to put the fire out, we have to teach people how to make fire with sticks. And you're like, no, we actually need to pick up this big water hose that it takes all of us to put out the fire, right? And so this concept of fighting fire with fire, same thing with black capitalism. You have people with this idea that they're going to walk up to a house on fire and put it out with maybe a lighter or starting the fire. So we need to teach poor kids how to start fires with sticks. And that's the way we're going to put out the fire. So that's the kind of rhetoric. I want y'all to hold on to that analogy because we're going to kind of use it throughout the time. Frantz Fanon says the basic confrontation, which seemed to be colonialism versus anti-colonialism, indeed capitalism versus socialism, is already losing its importance. What matters today, the issue which blocks the horizon, is the need for a redistribution of wealth. Humanity will have to address this question, no matter how devastating the consequences may be. So again, you can run around with capitalism when as it falls and as the people fight against it, the people who are involved in it gonna get it too. For instance, if you're on a boat and the boat is sinking, rearranging the room, winning the lotto in the gambling spot, teaching people about financial literacy is not going to stop those people from crashing that boat, right? Same thing with analogy with the lighter or the making sticks. If we go get that hose and we come to put out the fire and we see you trying to make sticks, we're going to associate with you as being our enemy, right? So you're not trying to help us. Martin Luther King says, again, let me read it off of here. Again, we have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew as and prospered out of Protestant ethic of hard work and sacrifice. The fact is that capitalism was built on the exploitation and suffering of enslaved Africans and continues to thrive on the exploitation of poor, both black and white, here and abroad. Again, so very clearly, none of your leaders, none of our leaders here are celebrating any form of black capitalism, right? Any form of this concept of getting it on our own apart from this government. And so this is important when we talk about the nonprofit industrial complex, because you have people say we don't need the government, we can just get it done with ourselves. And sometimes it falls into this rhetoric of black capitalism. Go to the next slide. So in Charleston, we have this thing called real, right? When people say, man, you ain't real, right? So if somebody who's not real or something that's not real, they're normally a flam or of not quality, right? And so me and my brother Asafa, we have this lecture called Real, right? It's a African-centered critique to African progress in America. And so I'm asking this question, is your nonprofit real, right? Is your nonprofit real? And so in this lecture, I'll go into it briefly now, but we can go into details if you're interested in the lecture later. But the R stands for representation, E expiation, A amelioration, and L liberation. So when you think about your nonprofit, is the goal of your nonprofit to create representation for a group of people? We all know that representation is normally not so good. For instance, if there's a white organization in your community, dominating your community, all white employees, them hiring one black person is not going to change the purpose of their organization. So a lot of times representation is not such a good thing. Right? So you see and hear things like Black Girl Magic. And if Black Girl Magic is saying that, oh, there's one black woman integrated the military forces, and that military forces is responsible for blowing up African children in different countries of Africa, that's not such a good thing, right? So instead of representation, we want more so of expiation. So we want the people to be repaired. So is your organization trying to make more black entrepreneurs, or is it trying to solve the things that causes these people to be dominated, or is it putting them in a situation to solve it? So expiation is repairing the people on a large level, on an important level. Amelioration, again, this is something that most nonprofits are set up to do, to ameliorate situations. So if food apartheid is a situation and you have people who don't have access to food, right? They develop some kind of hunger headache. an ameliorative solution will be to give out free Tylenol to the people for hungry headaches, right? And then the last one is liberation. Are you putting the people in a position so that they can get economic justice, so they can get expiation, and so that they can be liberation for domination? So when we ask, is your nonprofit real? These are some of the 4 benchmarks that you can go. And let's go to the next slide. I can tell you right now that majority of the nonprofits are set up in the ameliorative and the representation space. So when you are in the ameliorative or representation space, you have structural and political limitations. There's only so much you can do, right? Not so far you can go. Throughout this conversation, I'm going to be pulling on a book called The Revolution Will Not Be Funded by Insight Group. And so I'm going to read a passage from there to kind of illustrate what I'm saying. In the United States, the raw size of private foundations, along with their desire to affect the course of events in the United States and the world, have made foundations one of the handful of major political actors in our society. But they are the ones that draws the least public attention. As the foundation's lifeline has sustained the NPIC, so I'm going to use that from now on, nonprofit industrial complex, emergence into the primary components of U.S. political life. The assimilation of political resistance projects into quasi-entrepreneurial corporate-style ventures occurs under the threat of unruliness and antisocial deviance, right? So when you see this quasi-entrepreneurial, you see a lot of these nonprofits are actually running like entrepreneurial spaces, right? I got an email that I'm gonna share with y'all later on in this conversation where you can kind of hear this concept of entrepreneurial, right? I'm an entrepreneur getting money to help solve a problem that really not solving the problem. So Abdul Jabbar, who's a political prisoner currently, U.S. government affair, arguably forms of sustained grassroots social movements that do not rely on the material assets of institutionalized legitimacy of the NPIC have become largely unimaginable within the political culture of the current U.S. left. If anything, this culture is generally disciplined and ruled by the fundamental imperative to preserve the integrity and coherence of the U.S. white civil society. And the ruling class of philanthropic organizations and foundations may at times almost unilaterally determine whether certain activists, commitments, and practices are appropriate to their consensus vision of American democracy. So what you're seeing here is these funders, right, who have their hands tied behind their back or they're out of the public eye, are able to shape what organizations is legitimized and which is not. So you can see the more revolutionary organizations won't get the funding, won't get the access, and the not so revolutionary will get the funding. And we'll see how the foundation start. Go ahead to the next slide. So uniquely, there's this concept of a problem, right? The problem that you see heavily influence the solutions that you create, right? And so these people are aware of that. So they're able to shape how you see the problem, right? And when they shape how you see the problem, they either directly or indirectly control the solutions that you have or create, right? So if I'm telling you this is the problem, and I'm also telling you this is a solution, you're either going to do that solution or you're going to creatively create some kind of solution based off of the wrong premise. So in Blueprint for Black Power, I know everybody has that book. I'm not sure if everybody reading it or going through it. I'm not sure if it's collecting dust like a Bible, but there's some really important parts in there, and we'll be pulling on that as well today. So in one of the pages in Blueprint for Black Power, Dr. Amos Wilson says, foundations in a number of instances can become the vehicle of the reconstruction of important social institutions. The newly constructed or created institutions may themselves become vehicles for the transmission and ultimate institutionalization of the ruling class interest into the cultural spheres. This is from Siebold, 1987. Thus, the ruling elite, in effect, through its foundations, mounts a cultural war against alternative and competitive ideologies. By attempting to shape and delimit intellectual discourse in academia and in larger society, Foundations using their funding mechanisms may seek to not only change the types of questions academia and the general populace may ask and the issues they may perceive as important, but also the methods by which these questions are and issues are confronted. So, example, if poverty is a thing in these institutions, instead of questioning, okay, how is poverty created? They'll say, hey, are those poor people financial literate? Or they're not? Okay, well, they need to be financial literate. So they can control the questions that you ask and the solutions through this. And we'll see in detail one project of them doing that. But in detail, they can control the way people think, institutionalizing the way people think through the institutions and also the nonprofits, because they're controlling who's getting the funding and how. Right? Jared Ball, in this powerful book that broke up this whole myth of black buying power, he says, for solutions to come, it is true that those spaces where black politics are most often discussed and where the future of black people are most seriously considered, must rid themselves of this and other mythologies related to the economy of the United States and the role that black people play within it. So again, if you have any issues or any spaces where black politics are concerned, which is everything where economics and politics are concerned, any solutions that you build, it has to be rooted in truth, right? It can't be rooted in falsehoods, and it can't be rooted by the people who are controlling the problem. Go ahead, next slide. So one of the things I want to show and highlight here. So the problems are created by a group of people, a class of people. So the problem creators are beginning to create solutions for us, and these solutions don't solve. And we'll see this again. We'll see throughout history of the nonprofit industrial complex why it was started, what was happening, and how it might still be interacting with us today. So Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie Corporation, Russell Sage, and the Ford Foundation, and the numerous agencies in the federal government, goal was to preserve the stability of American class race status quo. Now look at this. This is interesting to me. So most of y'all know Rockefeller by Jay-Z. Some of y'all might know John D. Rockefeller, but most of y'all are introduced by the concept and the name of Rockefeller through Jay-Z. Wouldn't it be interesting that these people who are controlling behavioral revolution and behavioral science and how people interact and look at problems, right? And then Jay-Z in particular, who is a black capitalist and who would tell you that he's the reincarnation version of Fred Hampton, right? Fred Hampton died the same day he was born, and so now he's Fred Hampton. So music is a major form of teaching. Jay-Z, the black capitalist who would teach you that black power is black capitalism, orientates you to look at Rockefeller in a positive way. Same thing with Carnegie. Your probably favorite artist has performed at Carnegie. You even have some black artists who are teaching at the Carnegie. And Ford Foundation and so on and so forth. You know, you see these advertisements where musicians and entertainers are signing endorsements. So all these people who are actually controlling the way things are going are also having a positive light among our people through our entertainment class and so on and so forth. Siebold in 1987 told us the role of groups like the Ford Foundation was to identify actual potential threats to the status quo and address them with a program of political research which could aid the struggle to maintain political stability, right? So if Rockefeller, Ford Foundation are telling you, or Rockefeller or people like celebrities like that are telling you that, you know, you need to circulate the black dollar, you're going to more likely listen to them instead of confront the power structure. If LeBron James get paid another $1 billion or whatever, you're not going to look at him. I mean, you're not going to look at the people who is working these arenas getting their labor exploited and living in poverty. You're going to look at, celebrate that. So they're able to kind of give you positive light and something to strive towards through our entertainment class. All right, the next, missionary, industrial, and corporate philanthropy provides HBCUs, with an education of servitude. See, I want y'all to see James D. Anderson's article, Philanthropic Control Over Private and Black High Education. So if you think your entertainment class, the elite among you, the educated among you, right? Media, so forth. These things are teaching you to look at how problems are right? Look at the supposedly solutions, but not address the power structure, right? All of these people are doing the same thing. Now, each of y'all probably have a nonprofit in y'all community that's headed by a white woman or man who's not from the community, right? So these NGOs, they come into these spaces with their whiteness. They have access to the colonialist funders, so Rockefellers and the big funders, and they control these spaces and the agenda, and they come in there like an authority. So you'll be saying like, yo, this white woman is from Kansas coming to Charleston saying she's an expert on violence reduction and she's doing this and so forth, right? And so, again, we're going to see how some of these white nonprofit folks had kind of moved into the space and kind of been puppets for the philanthropists or the capitalists. Go to the next slide. So collectively, the top 25 givers have contributed 51 billion to nonprofits from 2014 to 2018. So the other day I saw something. Somebody was saying like you give $9, like they was giving some kind of money. A black group give $9, or I don't remember the number, and after a month, it'll be this much each month. And then after a year, you know, if you got so many black folks doing it, you'll get $1 billion, right? And again, they're telling us to pool this money together, and that $1 billion is going to actually do something when these people are putting 50 billions and more into nonprofits, into institutions to reshape the way people think, right? And we're going to match them with $1 billion. That's not going to happen. Anyway, so these nonprofits, are getting these funds from these people, these capitalists, and they're controlling what they do with the funds and how they think and the questions that they ask and the solutions that they supposedly create. And they're supporting everything from criminal justice, education, reform of science, or you can call it pseudoscience, scientific research, pseudoscientific research, and poverty alleviation. I want y'all to see that word and focus on that word, because you're going to hear that a lot. Not solving poverty, but alleviating. So I want to also give you guys, so when I do consultant, these are questions that I will ask anybody I'm going to work with, anybody in the nonprofit realm. So you can write these questions down and you should ask it. Even if you're just going to, you know, the new nonprofit, say that white lady coming to your community now, ask her some of these questions, right? First question is, where does the funding come from? And what are the strings? Are there strings with the funding that you get? So Miss White Lady, I know you're in this place and you're saying you're expert. Where does the funding come from and what are the strings attach? Okay, that's hard for you to answer. What solutions are these funders funding? So you got some kind of solution. Tell me the solution that you have that these funders are funding. How does the funding impact your work? Does it tie some of your stuff up? Does it help you accomplish things? Right? How much effort goes to making sure the funders are satisfied? Again, you come here to help these kids, but you're trying to do everything you got to do to please the funders. Right? Are you and your staff a part of the community, or are y'all separate from it? Can you challenge the power structures in your role? I remember one day this lady asked me, say, hey, your think tank, y'all should, you know, try out for this Rockefeller grant and blah, blah. And I'm like, there's no way that you can get funding from Rockefeller holding them responsible for the conditions that we see in the first place. They're not going to fund that. So I'm asking you, can you confront the power structure in your current role, right? Are you tied up and you can't say certain things? Is your organization a white space, right? A lot of times these are white spaces where white people feel comfortable, right? Here's a big one. You trying to hire me, Miss White Lady, and ain't nobody in here black but me. So I need you to tell me, what's your philosophy of tokenism? And when you ask her that question, she probably her neck gonna be red and she gonna get nervous. But still, ask her that question. What's your philosophy on tokenism? And how can occupational segregation happen in your organization? Because you the ED and the financial person white, and it look like ain't nobody else in black. Maybe the person who cutting grass. So how can occupational segregation happen in your organization? Now, the last question, I got that one the biggest, because you can throw all the other questions. If you don't want to play with the white people, you can throw out all them questions, ask this question right here. How is poverty created and solved? And so if they don't begin to tell you violence is created by policy and violence, then you probably connected with the wrong people. Because again, if you don't see the actual problem for what it is, the solutions that you create can't be reality. All right, go to the next slide. So as I said before, I want y'all to look at this chart. I'm gonna make the screen bigger so y'all can see it. But I want y'all to look at this chart, and this is coming from Blueprint for Black Power. And like I said, there's a actually I was doing this. All right, but like I said, you have to get in some of these books, right? And in the Blueprint for Black Power is a great book to be in, but it's kind of a breakdown of how money goes to different places. So you see the personal wealth go to universities and corporations, foundations. They go to the universities. Just go to policy planning groups, right? You see universities going to the media, right? And so when you see in the community and you say, oh, this many black men left the house and blah, blah, blah on the news, according to the University of Coastal Carolina, whatever. And so you can kind of see a flow chart of how all these things are connected, right? All right, next slide. So remember we talked about shaping the way people think, right? I'm going to read this quote from Brother Steve Biko, but then also show you an example of how they're able to use their funds to shape the questions and how things are happening, right? So Steve Biko says, at the heart of Black consciousness is the realization that by blacks, that the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. If one is free at heart, no man-made chains can bind one to servitude. But if one's mind is so manipulated and controlled by the oppressor, then there will be nothing the oppressed can do to scare his powerful master, right? And that's his I write what I like. So again, Jeff Bezos is not afraid that anybody gonna do anything so he can say thank you for giving me this money, to waste your money to act like I'm going into the out of the earth. So in Blueprint for Black Power on page 187, if you got it, turn to it. We feel like we're in church right now. So back in 51 through 57, the Behavior Science Division invested $23 million, right, for individual scholars in the graduate departments throughout institutions. And in this space, 550 of the 900 students, or the 900 fellows, 980 fellows, went into faculty positions in the university, holding 181 colleges across 38 states, right? So again, if I'm teaching these people how to think and how to address problems, then I send them off into universities to educate leaders, including the black leaders. I'm beginning to shape their minds. And so they went in the institutions, but they also went into the government services, philanthropic and nonprofit organizations, business class, right? So everywhere that a community can be institutionalized, they went into it. Also, they published 337 books, wrote 300 articles, and also edited another 516 volumes. So you're seeing that these people spend tons and tons and tons of money, like Steve Biko say, to maintain and win the mind of African people. So you will hear African people blaming themselves for their conditions. So you'll say, well, we ain't circulating the black dollar. That's because we whatever. We'll hear all this anti-African antagonism towards ourselves that they created in some of these institutions, right? So go to the next slide. Don't think you just thought of it your own. So one of the phrases called compassionate conservatism, right? What white folks will tell you is the work of government in participation with charities to lessen, we've seen that word again, lessen the pain of the disadvantaged. Again, not solve it. We're not here to solve it. We're here to lessen it. And so an example will be conservatives will slash federal funding or welfare benefits to fund marriage promotions as a poverty prevention policy targeting poor women. So they'll say, listen, the reason why these women are poor because they ain't married. right? So what we should do is promote these marriage promotion, and you know what? Boom, that'll fix everything. And then they'll be like, okay, churches, the nonprofits, volunteers, y'all take care of the food and the home, all the basics, the basic needs that humans should have. Y'all take care of that, right? And then they'll, this is under the mantle of compassionate conservatism. But the thing is, a lot of us are orientated to celebrate those things. So once he come to the spot, give us a hug and probably wear a dashiki, raise his fist and do a knee, we cool with the piecemeal solutions rather than like policy. So we have this fantasy that anything is better than not, right? So go to the next slide. And what happens is you will see people saying things like, well, at least they're doing something. It's better than nothing, right? And I want us to begin to get rid of this concept of at least they're doing something. The brother who's trying to strike the sticks to help you put out the fire in your house, bro, you ain't doing nothing. Actually, you need to put them sticks down to bring your lazy ass over here, pick up this hose with us, and let's spray this water out. Because there's at no point, and we're going to see this in some of these emails, at no point is you rubbing sticks together is going to put out the fire that's burning down your house. So we're going to have to start questioning this, at least they're doing something. Well, they had good intentions. I don't want to really pay attention to the intentions of somebody who comes to a house burning trying to teach kids how to make fire with sticks. And I know these analogies might be like, oh, you're exaggerating with analogies. But you really got to think about some of these analogies and how dumb they sound, but how dumb some of these solutions that people are trying to create. So this whole concept of had good intentions, I would question the person, whether they're wealthy or not, who believes that helping victims of politically created poverty instead of examining how wealth and poverty is created, right? And even if you are going to do some of these ameliorative solutions, you still should know how things are created, right? Not saying that we should, close all the people who are trying to help and trying to stop the bleeding per se. But if you're doing that not knowing that there's a much larger thing out there and not knowing actually the cause of it, I question your intentions, right? Also, I question the intention of those who advocate for this concept of black capitalism, or even if they maintain relationships with wealthy white people to secure funding for foundations and grants instead of developing political power to create or change the social climate. Because again, those little piecemeal things ain't gonna work. Again, Martin Luther King says, I am now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income. So again, your boy was talking about universal basic income a long time ago, and it's a good chance that's why they got him up out of there, right? But he's talking about something that's going to change fundamentally the condition of people, right? It's not trying to piece things together, but something that's going to fundamentally change it. Nelson Mandela, reason why he was in prison for a long time. Poverty is not an accident, like slavery and apartheid. It is man-made. It is man-made, and it can be removed by the actions of human beings. Go to the next slide. So when we start thinking about nonprofit industrial complex, and we know that most of their solutions come from this idea of something to fix a political creation, right? So the political economic domination by groups, these nonprofits are set up to try to fix these things. So let's look at why and how the capitalist interests and the state use nonprofit industrial complex. So throughout time, some of the ways they use it was to monitor, and like we've been reading before, and we'll read a little bit more, monitor and control social justice movements and the more radical and revolutionary ones. So you have this guy talking about reparations and policy, and this person talking about financial literacy. They'll bring those people in the community to extract information from the more radical revolutionary people and defund them and delegitimize them and raise up the not so radical ones. An example, you remember at the funeral of, and I talk about this often because this is like white people just be telling you stuff. They honest. Jeff Bezos was honest with y'all. Bill Clinton stand at John Lewis' funeral and says, the movement almost got too far left to Stokely Carmichael, but John Lewis prevailed. He's saying, I'm lifting, and we're lifting up solutions that John Lewis will, but we have to delegitimize Stokely Carmichael. So nonprofits have been used like that, to be placed in these communities to defund and delegitimize the real radical, the revolutionary people, and lift up these assimilationist, ameliorative solutions, right? Another one, funding and controlling activists. So you see that activist funding is going popping, whether it's DeRay McKesson and Tamika Mallory, whoever these people are. When you want to control them, you start funding the activists, funding the ones that you want to be moving. Divert public monies into private hands and foundations. So again, we have all this money to actually fix this issue, but instead of fix the issue of poverty, let's just give the money to some of these, white folks to teach the kids financial literacy or something. All right, masking exploitation with philanthropy. So we'll see in a second that the early philanthropic folks, those white capitalists, were avoiding paying taxes and pretty much cleaning up their money. Maximize efforts to protect capitalism. Again, this nonprofit industrial complex, this whole philanthropic move wasn't to solve any problems. It was to protect the efforts of, use all the efforts to protect capitalism, because they don't want you to confront the system. They just want you to not be so, shitty about your conditions. The last one is social movements embracing parts of capitalism. So it gets hard out here. It gets hard out here when you're not being funded. You're being delegitimized. And so sometimes you'll see groups start to actually adopt some of these capitalistic ways and exploitive ways because the money started to get enticing. So they're using the non-profit industrial complex to maintain white hegemony, maintain capitalism, and not be stopped. So again, you have a nonprofit now. You might be working through nonprofit now. I want you to look at your organization and see if it fall in lines with how it was created. Go to the next slide. You can be mad, but ask questions after we finish. We can talk about it. We can dialogue about it. So again, I will question anybody in a nonprofit space who don't study political science, especially from an African-centered lens, don't study how dominated and people who are doing the dominating, the interactions between the two, and don't have a working definition, a full understanding of a white hegemony and Black economic opportunities, right? So the great sister Kirsten Mullen and Sandy Dirty, the couple, husband and wife, they wrote this powerful book that anybody who's working on poverty solutions, anywhere in the nonprofit sector, should be reading this book, should be studying this book, maybe study it with a group, whatever. They said racism and discrimination have perpetually crippled Black economic opportunity. At several historic moments, the trajectory of racial inequality could have been altered dramatically, but at each juncture, the road chosen did not lead to a just and fair America. So economic justice got aborted every time political diversions happened. And some of us today are still regurgitating the political diversions that was created at some point. Instead of economic justice, right? We going with the political diversions. And they fully laid that out in that book. So make sure you grab that book. Go to the next slide. I want to go into a little bit of history of the nonprofit industrial complex. And again, pulling from the revolution will not be funded. Prior to the Civil War, individuals, not organizations, did most charity work. However, in the face of accelerated industrialization and accompanying social ills, such as increased poverty, community breakdown, to facilitate the flow of labor and violence, local organizations, generally headed by community elites, developed to assist those seen to be deserving of assistance, right? Certain people, such as widows and children. These charities focus on individual poverty rather than poverty on a systematic level. You see that? Charities did not campaign for higher wages, for instance, but work to ameliorate the impact of low wages on communities, right? So and again, you're going to see this in the email, an email from an organization that I had to not work with. Another one. This system of charitable giving increased exponentially during the early 1900s, when the first multimillionaire robber barons, such as John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and Russell Sage, created new institutions that would exist in perpetuity and support charitable giving in order to what? Shield their earnings from taxation. Not fix any issue, but shield. These white folks wanted to increase their wealth, not help black people, not help the people, not to help the worker class, increase their wealth. Let's not play the game like it's something else. All right. So real quick, I want to share with y'all some go to the next slide. I want to share with y'all an email from an organization. So little brief fast history. The organization wanted me to help them create some intellectual property in Baltimore. They wanted me to do it for free. I'm like, I'm not doing it for free. I'm not consulting you for free. I can't do that. That's not especially during a pandemic, economic crisis. And I turned that down, and they offered to go up some money, right? And then they offered to go up some money again. But they wanted me and some other people in Baltimore to do it. Now, I recognize some of the other people on there. So I called them. I said, yo, let me see your contract because I ain't with this. They show me their contract. Their contract doesn't say the money. My contract says the money, right? So now they only giving me money because I said something, not giving them. So I'm like, yeah, this is not going to happen, whatever. I make them raise up the price again. By the time they raise up the price, I don't really want to work with them no more because I know they're going to be exploitive. They've been so far. I told my other people, I'm like, yo, y'all can do what y'all got to do, but I'm not working with them. So I think they end up getting a higher money. I went through some programs with them, saw how they program work, heard some stuff, even interact with the young people. And after that, I was like, yeah, this is messy. So I sent them some data. I was like, yo, you need to take care of this and look at this. So I want to read some of the responses or the response from the executive director. And I won't release the name of the organization until it's time to. But you can see the back and forth if some of y'all already started reading, but you can see the back and forth in his mind, right? It says, I appreciate the links that you sent over, and I agree with so many of the points you made. True equity and closing of the racial wealth gap will not happen merely by promoting equity in entrepreneurship, education, or individual development. Systematic policy changes are an absolute must. But I don't think that means, here we go, but I don't, when it says, when the but come, everything else don't matter. But I don't think that means the other parts aren't impactful or worse, harmful to the cause of themselves, but instead are also necessary. Imagine the man who making the sticks, right? The man who making the sticks to try to put out the fire. Imagine him saying, this is necessary too, right? I'm getting paid a lot of money to help these black kids learn how to, play with the sticks. So this is necessary. I'm pulling in there, but this is what it sounds like to me. I don't know if it sounds like this to y'all, right? But instead, my bad. But I don't think that means that the other parts aren't necessary, but instead are also necessary. I'm reading much of that to be the points made here as well. In short, the composition of entrepreneurship type would need to be dramatically different in terms of ethnic and class makeup to have a net positive effect on the racial wealth gap. Yet, even if blacks had the same opportunities or business opportunities rates as whites, the question of scale and profitability of the business still would be an issue. No amount of tutorials or online courses from wealth experts can change the reality of the racialized advantages and disadvantages that undergird entrepreneurship in America. I believe that entrepreneurship, and more importantly, the mindsets and skills we aim to equip. Mindset. So you're giving these kids mindset. You're giving them entrepreneur mindset because what? Because you think entrepreneur is going to help them. Not that fact that if 20 of them start an entrepreneurship business, only 3 of them going to succeed or get past the next level, and then one economic crisis can take all them out because black folks don't have that kind of capital. And the lack of entrepreneurship wasn't the reason why they're in the condition at the end. But none of that. You need to teach them the entrepreneur mindsets. I can see. Sorry for the person on the road driving a motorcycle. All right. Where we at? Entrepreneur in America, mindset, skills to equip our youth with can be transformational, not only to the individuals, transformation, I want to see that, but also the community. So I want to see how that's going to happen. We can talk about that. But in no way is what we are doing a silver bullet. Here we go with that. We can catalyze human potential, but when access to finance financing or social capital or a safety net or the millions of other problems that still exist is unchanged, we will not achieve true equity, right? So you're not going to achieve true equity, but you're going to still do your thing, right? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do our work. It is still an essential part of the movement. Though insignificant in itself, no one cause or approach will close the racial wealth gap. We need a diversity of tactics, and together with different people tackling different parts of the problem, we can move in the right direction. Again, that guy rubbing the sticks to try to make fire, bro, that shit ain't working. In fact, I believe the diversity. Yeah, the person at the front of the hose, he gonna be doing different work than the person at the back and the person in the middle. So we do need a diversity of tactics. But I just know the fire at this time, the sticks ain't putting out it. Let's go to his personal at the bottom. Personally, I feel that it is often more helpful to find a specific niche and core competency and do that really well, especially because there is no silver bullet and we all have different parts to play. While I believe what we are doing is transformational and creating outsized impact, primarily it's not about entrepreneurship and capitalism. So wait, the kids are victims of capitalism and you're going to teach them entrepreneurial mindsets to engage with capitalism. But what you're doing is not about entrepreneurship or capitalism? I'm not sure. Again, I could be reading this wrong. Maybe y'all read something differently. Y'all tell me. It's about catalyzing the human potential to be a creator and change maker. Be a creator and change maker. There's no way that you are creating or changing anything if you're teaching entrepreneurial skills to black kids to respond to capitalism. There's no way that that's happening. I also don't simply try to do the thing that is most impactful. I'm at the bottom, but instead find the thing I am most called to do. This call thing is kind of interesting because God is always calling you, or whoever is always calling you, to maintain capitalism or get $100,000, $80,000 to teach poor kids how entrepreneurship is going to help them with their poverty. It's always interesting that God calls people to do stuff like that. It's interesting, right? What he's most called to do and fit to do. Watch this. If I were to optimize impact, I might be working with government or at a big city or big policy think tank. And that's just not my kick. I much rather make a smaller impact working directly as entrepreneur and innovator. So you are entrepreneur. So I mean, you're trying to get paid. And that's probably why in your nonprofit, you're making this much money. Some of the other people making this amount of money. Then the low people not making no money. And the people y'all helping ain't getting shit. Right? And again, he said, if I was to make a bigger impact, I want to make a smaller impact. So I don't want to help y'all put out the fire. I want to teach black kids how to make fire because I think this is equally important or important. I can't stop what I'm doing to do what you're doing. Go to the next slide. I told y'all we're going to drive home that analogy about black people rolling up to the spot with a stick. But real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch out my screen because I really wanted to respond to this whole capitalism notion and its entrepreneurship. But my brother Diallo does 10 times better than I do. So I'm going to move myself out the way and let Diallo explain how I felt and how you probably should have responded to that. Y'all hold your jewels. You might feel some type of way after this, but look, we can talk about it in a second once he finished.
First, I just want to express my hatred for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurialism. And I really resent how we have this distorted view. An entrepreneur is literally a parasite. And they've been telling us this for generations. Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company and the maker and the so-called inventor of the industrial production process, stated that he hated having to hire a man when he only needed two hands. Workers are nothing but tools. They are nothing but assets. They fucking call us human resources. No entrepreneur can succeed without that mentality. Many of the businesses tell us, many of these true, honest entrepreneurs will say, I'm not in the business of making cars. I'm in the business of making profit. I'm not in the business of building homes. I'm in the business of building profits. And that's when you see so many entrepreneurs, they have multiple streams of income. They'll do anything that allows them to amass fiat currency. And we should hate those people. We should reject that mentality, and we should stop mimicking these insane motherfuckers that are doing that, because that's literally that's psychopathic behavior. They are psychopaths. Even white folks are starting to realize that a high number of psychopaths, or a high number of CEOs and high-earning individuals, let me talk like Kevin Samuels, stupid ass, or the high-value men, are literally have psychopathic mentalities and tendencies. Our goal in terms of the economy should be redistribution of resources and subversion of the system, not accumulation and hoarding of money or any material good. And I hate how this entrepreneurship has infected the revolutionary struggle. You shouldn't strive to be an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur is simply a parasite that seeks to consume and hoard and accumulate resources. You can be a painter. You can be a farmer. All farmers are not entrepreneurs. All artists are not entrepreneurs. All laborers are not entrepreneurs. Your goal should be to pursue your interests, to commit your time, talent, and resources to the positive aspirations of your community, to be a fucking human being, to be humane. Your goal should not to be to either have a skill that you already have, or to go out and develop a skill simply to enter the marketplace to exchange that for fiat, for life coupons called dollars. And we really need to, and like I said.
All right, so that's all I needed to get on there. So you probably could have even heard a few things that directly respond to the email, right? That email that was coming, and I hope you might have saw some parallels. You might have felt some way. Like I said, let's talk about it, and don't feel any type of way for us to talk about it. All right, go ahead. Let's go to the next slide. We'll wrap up in a second. Make sure you have your questions and your dialogue ready. So I want you to add this to your library. Philanthropy and cultural imperialism, the foundations at home and abroad. Similarly, I hope my internet is good. My internet is going crazy. All right, so the foundations at home and abroad simply contend that philanthropy serves as a guise for imperialism and the maintenance of ruling class elites. Right? Great read. Make sure you grab that. Go to the next slide. So there's a video delay. Please forgive me. All right, so 2 books, right? So the revolution will not be funded. That's obviously one, but another one I want y'all to check out is The Whiteness of Wealth, how the tax system impoverished Black America and how we can fix it. So along with the growth in donations came a huge swell in the number of nonprofit organizations. In many cases, these foundations serve as tax shelters. We heard that. So that corporations could avoid taxes and descendants could receive their inheritance without paying estate taxes. We also talking about generational wealth, right? Early on, many of these organizations employed those who had been part of the charity movement. Watch this. So remember those white women who's doing all the charity stuff? Y'all ain't making no money over that. These capitalists, hey, we can pay y'all this salary to keep doing this on a large scale so that you can protect our interests. Them white women's like, sure, I can fill my heart with doing good, and I can fill my pocket while I'm doing good, right? The good work. So they were some of the first workers. But unlike the charity movement predecessors, these foundations' purviews would be general rather than specific, and their governance would rely on private, self-perpetuating boards of trustees or directors. From their inception, foundations focus on research and dissemination of information designed ostensibly to what? Ameliorate social issues in a manner, however, that did not challenge capitalism. So how can we do this thing where we can still eat and eat off the backs of black folks and poor working class people? You've seen it. That's some more reading for you. Go to the next slide. I got another thing for you to read. Beyond Hegemony, reappraising the history of philanthropy in African American higher education in the 19th century by the guy Tyrone McKinley Freeman. He actually got a book out right now talking about black giving, and I think it's centered around Madam C.J. Walker. But here's this. With emphasis on black colleges founded after the Civil War, this literature has reviewed philanthropy as a controlling force that had devastating consequences for this unique set of institutions. It presented philanthropy as something that Northern whites did to Southern blacks, sometimes out of seemingly genuine concern for educational uplift of the larger illiterate former enslaved struggling to make sense of the post-emancipation South, but mostly out of paternalistic, condescending, self-aggrandizing, and hegemonic motivations. This is how it started. I'm only saying this is how it started. Y'all can say how it's going now. We can keep dialogue. Go to the next slide. So I want to give y'all some examples of some organizations that I've been working with a little bit. And y'all just tell me what y'all hearing this, because these language is interesting, right? And one of them, the last one, is going to piss y'all off. Y'all going to jump through the screen and try to punch somebody, but don't punch me because I'm in the fight with y'all. So one of the organizations, their missions, our core mission is to strengthen urban communities by helping fathers and families achieve stability and economic success. So let's see what they're saying here. The first one, CFUC. Opportunities for economic and financial security through work. Financial security through work. That's interesting. In a state where they're trying to fight for $15. That's their minimum wage. Think about the language, minimum wage, capitalist. How can we pay these people the most minimum basic wage so that we can get maximum profits? So anyway, you fighting for $15, which still ain't shit. And through employment, that's how you're going to get them financial security? All right, let's keep going. Go down to I'm highlighting the ones. Regaining their personal power needed to benefit their families and communities. Right, so they got 4,154 full-time jobs for them upon completion of workforce development. Again, I'm not saying that, hey, don't get people jobs. What I'm saying is this ain't gonna make them financially secure, and this ain't gonna solve capitalism or their effects of capitalism. So let's not act like it would. Let's not say that it would, especially in our language. So some of y'all might gonna run through your mission statements and see if like, am I lying too? But we'll figure it out. Help individuals and families attain sustainable economic self-sufficiency. Boy, I hope it's not the self-sufficiency like the black Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, where majority of those folks are poor working for white people. I hope you're not saying that that's self-sufficiency, working for an employer who you have to fight to get higher wages. But again, now sometimes these organizations, because remember why they was used to put in communities to do what? Sometimes when they're subverting other more radical people, they're also learning language from radical people. So you might even see stuff like accelerate social and economic opportunity and advocate for policies. Well, I'm just going to say, if you're going to advocate for policies, you should also know what cause things. So if your policies might be, well, we need policies, we need more funding spent towards people who are going to teach financial literacy. Well, those ain't the policies that we need, right? So advocating policy might sound attractive, but according to whatever other things people are doing, I'm not sure. All right. You know what? I want to even skip Druid Hill Heights. I'm going to go to the next one. So, St. Francis. All right, I'm going to save thread for later. Don't start reading thread yet, y'all. I hope y'all can't even see it. But St. Francis, ending generational poverty through education, inspiring in self-esteem, self-improvement, strengthening connections to community, tools that they need to advance their lives financially and socially. So if you're intergenerational poverty through education, inspires self-esteem, self-improvement, strengthening connections to communities, and that's probably what's causing poverty. So you do those things, and that's how you're going to end it. So you probably don't believe violence came. Oh, sorry, poverty came through violence. In policy, you believe violence came through whatever, and these people with low self-esteem is the reason why they're poor. Interesting. So our programs down in the middle, our programs build self-esteem as well as academic, emotional, interpersonal, social, and community development that works to address complex challenges in an effort to break the cycle of urban poverty. So it's unique, urban poverty, because urban poverty specifically is the one that comes from low self-esteem. The other poverty, that might be necessary for us to pay them things to get them out of poverty, but the urban one, yeah, those people just need their self-esteem tightened up. All right, let's go to the next one. We're going straight to thread. That's enough. So, I know I put their stuff on public, but it is already public, so I hope they change it on their website. Who knows? So, start off, the first alarming thing is ending social isolation. So they up there fancied what happened with the Brown versus Board and talk about how it created a concentration of poverty development and blah, blah, blah. And Thread breaks the cycle of poverty or crime, poor education, and economic outcomes and replaces it with a new system of educational attainment, services, and social well-being. Watch this, provide their students with provided students and family with completely customized support, packing lunches, rides to schools, and so on and so forth, clothes. All right. We can overcome the poverty of isolation because the reality is they know that you're poor because you're not around enough white people and other people. Because it's isolated. It's because you're isolated in this ghetto and you need to be around more whiteness, right? The wealth of human connections permanently linked by unconditional love and support. Children growing up in concentrated poverty need more than just improvement financially. Like the money is not that important. Y'all need more than just money, which could be possibly true, right? Resources and better classrooms. They need the same unsustainable support and deep interpersonal bonds that we all need. Thread, I'm going straight to the part that I want. It's right here at the bottom, right? I don't know if y'all can see it, but my dreams, let's start with my dreams. Look at this. This guy says, my dreams of becoming a scientist brought me from Iran to United States to Johns Hopkins as a PhD student. So we already know that this model minority didn't come from poverty, right? He got sent all the way over here and a PhD student. Well, here's this. However, the barriers of language and culture and presumptions made me feel lonely and marginalized and insignificant in my community. Now, I'm not going to, highlight the man trauma or whatever he's going on, but now all of a sudden he's marginalized. As a PhD student at Hopkins, probably come from a wealthy family, he feels marginalized. So now he can relate to some people, right? He's marginalized too. Something that we share. Insignificant in my community. And watch this. It seemed to me that all my dreams were going to wither. So I done come all the way over here, and I'm a PhD student, and my dreams just gonna go wither. Right when I was going to this gloomy struggle, I joined Thread. This sounds like a commercial. And met many dreamers. One of them, a high school student stuck in the cycle of failure, poverty, and drugs. Together, we learned not to lose hope and how to keep on dreaming for a brighter future. That ain't the half, right? So he's a PhD student. Now he got some cool points. He with the black folks, he poor people. And he's comparing his marginalization to this guy's marginalization. But that's not the half. Look at the bottom. Look at the bottom. Others before self. When you are in the greatest need, you have the most to gain from helping others. Help others accomplish their goals, be not yours. I can tell you right now, I know y'all want to jump to the screen and fight somebody. If you're telling this black poor kid that by you helping this PhD student feel more acclimated into the culture that he's not from. You should just focus on that, because that's when you receive the most. When you help others. The South will know how I feel about this when you're talking about the people with the sewage in their yard. Hey, I know that you don't have clean water and everything is horrible, but you need to help others before yourself. And that's how Bezos got to where he's at, because he helped others before himself. Maybe. Next slide. So, again, when we talk about nonprofits and we talk about solutions, right? These little silly ass solutions that's not connected to policy and not connected to the larger struggle ain't gonna do much of nothing, right? And if you're not aware of that, and if you're presenting your nonprofit as the solution or even a solution, I think it need to go through a real refinement process to see if it is solution, if it's solution oriented, if it's real, if it's maintaining the power structure, is it challenging the power structure, right? And so we came up with a few policies, and this is not all of them. There's more policies that you should be focusing on and helping your people organize and be educated. Because once you become politically literate, you become politically organized, and then you can create some political action that actually change the conditions of our people. So one of the policies is organize and demand at the IRS to publish stats by race. So one of the things that Dorothy Brown exposes is that the tax system is extremely racist. It's extremely dominating and taking money from black folks and lifting up white folks. But they don't post taxes by race, which they have access to. But once they do, you'll see how pervasive and how racist that the tax system has been. So force them to post that so that we can create the more awareness about that. Wars. Stop the desire to manage other countries' internal politics, right? We can't even handle our own shit. So going over abroad and trying to handle it. I think Biden did some shifting, but again, you pay taxes. You've been paying taxes since you've been here. It is important for you to organize and demand where those taxes are spent so that it can empower the people that it's supposed to empower. Not this old neoliberal, we don't need the government. That's not a reality. In every aspect, every stop, you're paying taxes, right? Ecological justice and restoration. There's policies focused on that. Demand cultural competency training for nonprofits. Now, we ain't gonna be able to shut all the BS nonprofits down today. That's not gonna happen. It's gonna be a roll-up process. But what you can do is demand cultural competency training for people who understand what we need and the problems, and for these people to mandatorily train nonprofits. And these things needed to be developed by low-income, wealth, African Black people, right? So people like yourself who don't know this stuff, you probably been saying, yeah, that's right. People like yourself, we need to organize and make sure that we're getting into these nonprofits so that they can get the message like, yo, we know what it is. And if you're not, doing what you need to do, shit gonna get uncomfortable. That's kind of some of how my work is. I go into these nonprofits, and if they're not doing, they don't have the community's best interests at heart, the community gonna know about it, and we're gonna expose them. Community control policing, that's another one. Housing, recognized as a human right? Whether it's housing cooperatives or whatever, making sure that we are actually doing something to change poverty on a mass scale, not, teach 3 Black kids how to balance a checkbook as your response to poverty. Food sovereignty and reparations. So you'll be able to see a lot of those things, especially in those resources that I told you to read. But right now we want to open up for some Q&A. We were going to wrap up with the Q&A. So if you have any questions, make sure you type your questions in. I know Safa will be able to get back to the questions. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, share it so we can get in some final questions. And if you're rewatching it after the live, you can also dialogue, and we will definitely get in the mix with you. So bring us Safa back, and let's get into the Q&A session. Oh, I got to stop sharing my screen first.
All right. That was a great talk. So we have a couple of questions. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So we have, let's see here. Let me take a look. Let's, I'm going to pull up Brother Kwasi's question here. It says here, should we organize to replace the corporate-run, white-dominated organization with Black dominated and community run organizations. Examples like the Boys and Girls Club, the upper management is 90% white, but the organization serves 90% black and brown.
Yeah, so I think it's important to remember what we said, that black capitalism is not gonna save us from capitalism. So this whole concept of dominating people, we don't want dominations in blackface, right? We don't want neo-colonialism. We don't want black capitalism. And so, no, we shouldn't. But what we should do is understand the conditions that we are working on, and maybe create things like cooperatives to address those needs on a bigger scale, as opposed to trying to make a black version of something that we are against in a white space. So I would advocate not now. How can you subvert or get into these organizations to destroy them? I mean, that's probably another conversation offline. But I think if you want to do anything with those organizations, you want to destroy those organizations, not replace them with black.
Okay, so let's take a look at some of the comments here. Brother Kufu, peace to the family. Sharif, good evening to all from Williamsburg, Virginia. The presentation is fire. Rodney Pierce, absolutely correct. So he's in agreement with a lot of your points. Nakata. Now, I would like a response to this point. Man, the general population really fell for this nonprofit scam, while they all were created by capitalists to funnel money under the table.
So, again, one of the things that is important, like, one, we shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be surprised that majority of people will fall for this, as they fall for any kind of like bubble-like things, whether it's the housing, the Freeman Savings Bank, whatever. We shouldn't be surprised because, again, these funders have the ability to delegitimize wrong solutions. I mean, delegitimize the right solutions and legitimize the wrong solutions. And so they have the power to do that. So it's not a surprise, right? I wouldn't be surprised or antagonistic towards the people who don't know. It's more so it's like we should expect them not to know. There's no way that you could know, right? And so I think, but for those that us do know, it makes us more obligated to be connected and collective and actually starting to educate people, right? So there's more than a Botter and Bill think tank to share information. There's tons of people out there, but I think it becomes our dire responsibility to make sure that people are knowing and us to expose some of these contradictions so that people can actually create solutions that actually solve our issues, as opposed to people getting money playing around in the pool with their legs dangling.
All right, Songsore Mulumba, thanks for sharing knowledge on this topic. Mr. Rodney Pierce asks a question: is this why socialism and communism are so frowned upon in capitalist countries?
Yeah, I think anything that doesn't maintain the capital for the capitalists is going to be negatively impacted. Like, I always find it odd that most people who talk about communism, socialism, and communalism, they have a hard time defining it, right? And so they have a hard time defining it because they're also educated by the people who try to demonize it. So yes, the whole we just did a lecture. No, we just did an interview on cooperatives, and we're studying cooperatives right now as a collective. And it's almost like if only people knew how easy or how better, how much it makes sense to work in cooperatives and be politically educated, organized. Like it will be a quick turnaround, right? It will be a quick turnaround. But when people are controlling your pay, your food, your education, right? You'll have situations like the situation in what the Frito-Lays about employee supposedly dying while at work, being forced to work tons of overtime, the managers tell them to remove that person, replace somebody, and keep working, right? And so these things that keep happening because you have people that are able to control the information, control the news outlets, control education spaces. So yes, the capitalists will make sure that there's extreme miseducation against anything that stops them from being the top dogs.
Well, I've been telling folks I'm working on I'm putting together a play about Maurice Bishop, and who is Prime Minister of Grenada, and Prime Minister who was leader of the New Jewel movement, and Marxist. And think about the role that the United States played in subverting the great strides that Grenada was making for her people under Marxism. And it reminds me, people always saying, oh, if socialism is so helpful, socialism is so good, why are all these countries that are socialist failing? Why are they falling apart? Why are they crumbling? And I tell people when they ask me that, I liken that to someone jumping up and asking a question. If American architecture is so wonderful, why aren't the Twin Towers still standing?
Right.
That's why I liken that type of question to when you ask about why socialism isn't working around the world. It's because there are forces at play that don't want socialism to work, and they insert themselves and impose themselves and subvert any real movement or development of an actual working socialist reality in these third world or fourth world nations. So we have to be very we have to be very careful, because right now you see the whole thing going on with Cuba. You have a complete attack on socialism. You have a complete attack on the Cuban Revolution. But what they're not talking about, what you're not hearing in the media, is the fact that for years, for decades even, there has been an embargo that has played just as much of a role, even if not more of a role, in the current economic malaise in Cuba as anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I was sharing something about the Mondragon experiment in Spain. I was sharing the video out with a couple people, and they was like, "Oh my gosh, it's amazing." And then some people were like, "Well, I want to see if it's still working. I want to do me research." And so when we talk about like the think tanks, the behavioral revolution and them controlling how people think and the questions that they ask, that's probably one of the things that they orientate us to ask. Like, well, is it still going? Because you even ask, or you bring this to the space about socialism. The white power structure and its puppets will literally say, well, look at China or look at so-and-so, it's not working. Like, you immediately go to, is it still thriving? Capitalism lasts this long, look. And so that means it's working, even though I'm poor as shit and I ain't got nothing, but it's working. Or this thing, well, why is it not working? So like Maurice Bishop, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas and Carr, when you look at these places, it's not running because it's not effective. It's not running because the power structure didn't want that to happen. And the people didn't have an emotional connection to it yet so that they can fight with the people. So I think that's a great point, because, again, when you're thinking about Steve Biko saying controlling the minds of the people, so now I have to see this shit large and working and looking like Jay-Z for me to jump on board with and say it's a good idea. So like that's how I'm judging my valuation is based off of something capitalistic, right? And not only the whole capitalistic, I'm not looking at America as the majority of Americans are poor. The majority of Americans are poor, but I'm still thinking capitalism works. So again, that behavioral revolution has did a number. It's still doing a number. Just like you said, the embargo has did a number. It's still doing a number. And I remember when the embargo, reading about the embargo initially how it affected young cancer patients. A lot of little kids was dying after the embargo took because of what America did, and Cuba was able to build themselves up to one of the better healthcare industries in the world. And so America got to send their damn doctors to Cuba to train. And so America here they are, the most capitalistic society or whatever you call them, and they have a damn third world healthcare system compared to the majority of other nations. So I think us learning what and how and it's going to be important, right? It's going to be important for us to even understand that these knee-jerk reactions and these responses, you know, they're others directed. We're definitely, there's not our thinking. It's not our thinking to say, well, you know, especially if we know America and how America has been, we understand white hegemony and political opportunity for, economic opportunity for black folks. Then we shouldn't be asking that damn question anymore. Like, is it still working or why it ain't still working? Like, that's crazy.
Should black folk create LLCs? That's from Brother Sharif.
So I'm not a business expert, and I don't take advice from me. But I think black folks need to focus way more energy on cooperatives. I think black folks need to get rid of this employee thing and get more into a cooperative. And so again, I'm not no tax expert or anything, so I wouldn't tell you if you should. But I think I haven't read anything that cooperatives are set up like LLCs. So, but I would suggest that black folks study and learn about cooperatives more so than LLCs.
Well, you know, and maybe my comment wouldn't be fair to Brother Sharif if perhaps he could comment further on the point of LLCs. But you know, I don't find too much that I agree with the ADOS movement about. But one thing I heard Yvette Carnell say a while back, a long time ago, and I still remember it to this day because I agree with it 100%. You're not going to overturn hundreds of years, centuries of oppression of black people by filing LLC paperwork. You know, it's not going to happen. And you know, so we have to really kind of focus our attention on building the goal of the Barter and Build think tank is, in our small way, to build political literacy, which will build political organization and a mass political movement. Okay, and it's through mass movements that we're going to be able to get the things that we want to get. Okay, and I think very often we spend a lot of time with the minutia of how to set up the bylaws of our nonprofit organization or something like that, when we really, you know, need to be trying to develop an ideology, a political and economic ideology that speaks to the suffering of millions and millions of not only black people, but oppressed people, not only in this country, but around the world as well. In the final analysis, as the globe is collapsing because of ecological devastation, in the final analysis, because of the wealth stripping, where black people are going to be completely wealthless by 2053, in the final analysis of the encroaching fascism, neo-fascism, and neo-feudalism that we see creeping up more and more in America's economic and political systems, it's not going to matter how good your LLC is. It's just not going to. It's not going to matter.
You know, I need to go back to my cruise ship analogy, right? You on this cruise ship, and these two white men about to crash this damn boat, and they have a way for you to upgrade your room, right? Upgrade your room, and you get an extra voucher so that you can get an extra piece of steak at the dinner table, and you get $5 extra every time you go into the casino. That shit gonna feel and sound good until that fucking boat hit that rock or go into that undertank. At some point, we have to stop being non-confrontational and trying to find ways of, you know, I don't know, getting it from the bottom. I don't know what the hell's going on. So yeah, I would agree. Like,
now if whatever personal, to like I said, much due respect to Brother Sharif, he's always on point. I respect him and admire him a lot. Whatever issue with the LLC, with his, whatever personal work he's doing, we just won't, we that's not what we will be able to answer at this time. But I think the broader point that we're making regarding LLCs or any other type of minutia when it comes to what type of paperwork to file or what have you is just I don't necessarily think it would be pertinent to what we're trying to do or what we're advocating for at this moment.
Right.
When will we finally realize money is the trap of capitalists, no matter profit or non-profit?
I was trying to figure out what that question was asking. When will we finally realize money is the trap of capitalism, no matter for profit or not? I'm not sure that I understand that question. Do you understand what he's asking?
So it's we realize money is the trap of capitalists, no matter. Well, I think it's kind of going along with the point of what we were just talking about. If you capitalism is the problem.
Yeah.
And the solution is to neutralize capitalism and replace it with an alternative economic system.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if things go as bad as they're going toward now, the pieces of paper, the dollars won't matter at all. Okay. We're gonna be burning that. We're going to be burning that money in order to stay warm.
Right.
Okay. Or we're going to be eating it not to starve to death.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. So I think that's the point Brother Rodney's trying to make.
Yeah, I would add. I think sometimes I remember an elder always say like things won't change until it hurt bad enough, and so looking at data that tells us that black wealth was at 17,000 per family, right? The median wealth, and that number was pre-COVID, and that number is going to continuously fall. So maybe when that number get to zero, like maybe that might be the time you're like, oh, something gonna happen, and maybe Jeff Bezos won't be able to say some shit like he said on TV, and maybe Frito-Lay won't be able to just put a dead body aside and keep working, like Mercedes here and other companies, like. So maybe it's when, hopefully when, or sooner, but maybe it's when that happens, like it start to hurt bad enough, and people are uprising, and there are political organizers that are able to harness some of that energy.
The only here's my pushback on that per se. I think we could be as anesthetized as possible while the world is burning down around us. Like, I think by the time the world is literally burning down around us, if we don't wake up now, they're going to come up with an even stronger way to numb us and make us numb and dull the pain that's coming from that, because it's happening now. I mean, because of climate change, we have so many ecological disasters and catastrophes all over the planet. The West Coast is on fire. We're having more and more on the East Coast here in South Carolina. We're having more and more hurricanes, and the impact are becoming more and more devastating. And we're I don't know. I mean, it's pretty bad now, and some of us are waking up, but obviously not enough of us. Right. So I just don't. It's so. I mean, even if it gets really, 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 really bad, if we allow it to get to that point, it may be too late. If it gets to the point where there's no other choice but to see it for what it is, it may be too late by then.
That's fair. Fair.
Oh, maybe I'm being too pessimistic.
I mean, you can't rule that out. I mean, I don't think you can rule that out. I can't say that I will be surprised, right? If so many things have happened, and people, things do come to people's front yard, and they're able to see certain things, um, and they still make rationalization or excuses for it. I mean, can't be too.
Early you made a point earlier about what we in my coming of age in doing research and coming of age in African-centered intellectual development, if you will, we call scientific colonialism.
Mhm.
And you mentioned it earlier from the perspective of people coming into these Black communities, Black oppressed communities, doing a lot of research, extracting that research, and then putting that research in the form of papers and things like that they use to build up their own notoriety. Oh, look, I did this great research in the Black community. But while the Black community they did research in absolutely gets nothing out of it.
Zero.
The only people that benefit are the people who came in and extracted the raw data that they used to do their write their books or their ethnographic studies or their research papers.
Yeah, I remember doing this work with this organization. Again, one of them. So, well, I can't remember now. I'm blanking on it here right now. But this guy named Wes Moore, he was the head of their organization at the point. He's from Baltimore now. Robin Hood Foundation. Robin Hood Foundation, working on poverty for 20, 30 years, they say. I'm on this big call with them. There's all a bunch of people. And I asked them, I was like, you know what, I feel, based off of this meeting, that if I ask each of y'all how poverty is created, I'll probably get multiple different answers. And that's a scary thing for you to be so focused on working on poverty, but you don't even know how to create it. And I think he left, he stepped down, and I think he's trying to run for office. Maybe he took some of the things, I don't know. But one day I was speaking with one of the ladies about getting some kind of information. And I was like, like these people are not, they're not dumb. They understand that some kind of policy has put them in the conditions that they're in, and there's somebody's economically benefiting from the conditions that they're in. And then those same people will send researchers and pay the researchers a bunch of money to say, what the fuck is wrong with y'all? And they get paid, and you probably throw them some gift cards and they don't get shit. And then after the research, they'll take that money and give it to some other white nonprofits and then teach them how to tie their damn shoe. So you see three people cycling, getting money off of the same person instead of the money going directly to them. She starts to stutter and turns like red, and she looked like an Asian lady, but she's like stuttering and stuff. But the reality is, like, and I'm letting them know, it's like, we know exactly what you're doing, and you're getting this information so that you can use it for your funders, and you can use it for this, and you can say this or whatever. But these things won't change. And so I think it's important, if you're in those spaces, to kind of call them out on that, publicize all these other things, and expose them, because eventually, like I said, subverting them or getting people into, I don't want to say train them, because I don't think they're going to do anything different. But at least until we can tear this whole shit down, you're going to have to try to subvert it in that way. But they definitely, the goal of the nonprofit was to go in there and monetize or monitor the actual radical people. Mm-hmm. So while monitoring them and making sure that they don't move, they also taking information from them. And you always have your people that will be eagerly telling all the white folks the language and the coded things, and they'll take those things, like that organization that want to take my intellectual property. They'll take those things and they'll use that shit. And if you ask for it, they'll give you $10 or $100, $200. But you got to ask for it, because if you don't ask for it, you're going to think, well, I'm just doing something for the good. And you got this poor righteous teacher mentality. Yeah, I'm just, trying to help my people. And they're stealing information from your ass, making thousands of dollars off of your people's pain. So, yeah, it's vicious, right? And I hope we begin to start to realize that these are nothing more than petty entrepreneurs who trying to get their coins. You read that email, like that guy he don't give a fuck about them churn. All he care about is I'm getting this funding for this nonprofit, and I want to feel good about this getting this funding. So they need to learn some mindsets and entrepreneurship. Like he don't care about them damn church.
Let's go through some more of the comments. See if there are any questions. Sharif, thank you. I may need to call for personal counsel. Yeah, Sharif, reach out, brother. We'll talk about that at a later time offline, and we'll see what you're referring to. All right. Brother Rodney, absolutely. Also, Brother Rodney, the truth hurts. Indeed, it does. Black meaning African. The idea of making the system work for us has to be exorcised from our minds.
Yeah, and that's a struggle. That's gonna be a struggle, man. Like it's hard to show these people that that system ain't even working for the majority of the people or white people. So when Fred Hampton is saying that when I say the masses are poor, I'm talking about the white masses. So the masses of white people are poor, right? The masses of each group is poor. The masses in general is poor. And so if you have to, and we talked about this with the Black Wall Street myth, if you have to live in this fantasy that something is beautiful and working, and it's literally not. We already know you don't do research and data stuff, like, so you don't know that majority of, I don't know, is it 90 or 95% of the country is poor. Like you won't be able to see that if you don't look at the stats. Maybe less or maybe more, I'm not sure. But until we realize that the actual thing doesn't work for everybody or the majority of people, and there are things that actually works for the collective, then we can start to burn that out of our minds. But like I think that's one of the biggest tasks right now, to like, it's like teaching somebody who's in a toxic ass relationship that they need to leave the relationship. But yeah.
All right, so Ashlyn, shout out to Ashlyn, shout out to Grand Strand Action Together. They do a lot of great work here in the Horry County area. So shout out to them. Hopefully, Water and Bill Think Tank will work with Grand Strand Action Together sometime in the near future. But her comment is, nonprofits love to exploit their employees and overlook their rights in the workplace.
Yeah,
you have a response?
Yeah, I think we talked about like and I'm specifically talking about marginalized or indigenous or employees, but even some of the other employees, like you have maybe some bright eye folks getting out of college or whatever and feel like they're doing the good work, and they do exploit. They exploit all of them, actually. They exploit the white, the black, or whatever. But I'm not gonna say I'm not so concerned about them, but I'm even more concerned about the people that they're supposedly helping that they're exploiting. So by putting Teddy Ray on television and smiling in a new suit because you taught him how to write a resume, and now you're gonna get a whole another $100,000. That's the kind of exploitation that I'm really, really angry at, right? At least these people got, some of them got insurance and some of them got whatever, but these people are actually getting shit. And the exploitation I'm worried about is the actual ground people that's doing the work. And so yeah, they definitely exploit their employees because most of them are quasi-entrepreneurial in their essence, and their goal is not really to solve the issue in the community. Their goal is to get funding from these power structure to feel good about, like, it's almost a whole ego industry. It's an industry centered around ego. I've been to some of these people's meetings, and they will say shit like, "Yeah, these people, they beat us. Like, if it wasn't for us and we wasn't here, I mean, this community would be devastated." What the fuck are y'all talking about? Like, so I sat in meetings like that, and yes, they exploit their employees, but again, I'm more concerned about the people that are victimized by a system, and then they exploit those people who even victimize. And I think that is, they kind of offer them up for the system to devour them even more. This time they get to devour them with a cool T-shirt on that says "Bread" or "We save the community" or something. We work. So that's what I'm.
I'm reminded when you said that, I'm reminded of a couple of years back we did and I mentioned this before, we did a conference. Now it was focusing on issues dealing with young people, and it was a historic conference. Ashland and GSAT helped us put it together. Now it was a historic conference, the first one of its kind to deal with these types of issues in Horry County, Georgetown County, and Williamsburg County here in South Carolina. And we had some moderate coverage in the news. What passes for Black media in Horry County? There are a couple of outlets. One of them is called the Whittemore Park Magazine. Now, and we know that the editor of this magazine knew about knew about this conference because he actually showed up. He gave no coverage to the conference in the magazine whatsoever. But you know what he did cover that happened around the same time?
What's that?
He covered and wrote a nice little article about 100 Black men of Horry County putting on a seminar teaching Black boys dining etiquette. So apparently, to him anyway, 100 Black men teaching Black boys the difference between the entree fork and the salad fork was much more important than, people of conscience coming together and organizing on behalf of public policy that will help marginalized young people. Teaching them how to eat with the right fork and the right spoon is much more important than organizing around policy. It kind of shows you, and 100 Black men teaching this and teaching boys how to tie a tie and all this other stuff. It serves a function. It serves a function. Just like let me add real quick, and I'll get your response. Just like the same conference, we had invited a sister who leads a literacy program, a popular literacy program here in Horry County. We had asked her to be a part of it, and she was enthusiastic about it and everything. And she asked me further questions, and I told her that the main long-term goal of this conference, long after this conference, is to build an organizing effort or a coalition around advocacy for public policy. And she acted like a deer in the headlights. It was she tucked her tail and ran so fast when we started talking about public advocacy for policy. And I'm just here to what she say? I'm just here to give kids a safe place to read. That's all. I just want kids to have a safe place to read. I don't do all that advocacy and stuff. Maybe we can work on something later on. Okay, she ran away. So they as she knows, these 100 Black men, this particular sister, they know what side of their bread is buttered, so to speak. They know not to piss off the wrong people, or they won't get any funding anymore. They won't get any notoriety in the community anymore.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, that sounds just like the email. The dude was like, "Oh yeah, if I wanted to actually make a large impact, I would actually do this. But I just want to stay in my small circle and teach them entrepreneur skills." It sounds just like the stick thing. I'm telling you, bro. I know this is a crazy ass analogy, and I come up with crazy ass analogies. But imagine this dumbass dude coming to a house fire and be like, "All right, right here, what's important is we need to teach these kids how to build their own fucking fire right now." And so they play with sticks to start a fire, and you're like, "Yo, imagine how dumb that is." But that's kind of how I see those things. Then imagine a newscast saying, "This white heroic man taught Black kids how to start their own fire And then the other news would be like, yeah, those black men was just standing there around complaining. They was complaining? Yeah, they was complaining. When reality, they would say, no, get your dumb ass over here and help us pull this hose so we can put out this fire. But that's complaining, so the news and the people are going to spin it that way. So that, I mean, and that's I have a couple people who they always say like, oh man, you should go on here, you should be on here because of some of the people we know personally. But like, I've been in media and I've been around and know that you are not going to confront the power structure on their shit, right? In a way that's going to reach any masses of people. That's the chances is slim. When it's time to cut, they're going to cut it off. Even here, if we get to a place where they're going to cut that shit off. You said Jared had some technical difficulty. There's a good chance. Like look like they're getting too big for themselves. So they're gonna spin it the way they need to spin it. And furthermore, when we go back to the behavioral science part, if the white power structure has a way of adapting your mind on how you see the problem, then again, everything that you create is not going to be solution oriented. So as a newscaster, if you really believe that we blowing we're not circulating the dollar, if you really believe that we're not financial literate, then you only going to produce shit that feeds your ego, not challenge, right? But feed it. So it's kind of like this, it's almost like they taking people's heads open and putting brains in it and sending them on their way. Like, so yeah, I'm never surprised at those things in the narration. And furthermore, I actually get upset more, and maybe we need to learn how not to do this. I get upset more with the people who protect those people. Like again, like I said earlier, the least we're doing something, or they had the best intentions. Like those are the people that I'm really angry at in terms of due to. These people don't know the better. They're gonna do what they do. But the people who defending that craziness is beyond.
Well, these programs here in Horry County get they get a lot of love and admiration from even the most reactionary elements in reactionary politicians, reactionary business people. So that in and of itself would let any group of politically literate people know I probably don't need to be rocking with this organization. Mm-hmm. We probably need to sit these people down rather than propping them up as role models in our community.
Right.
So it's but again, that's the goal, hopefully, of groups like us, groups like Black Power Media and others, to try to build a semblance of political literacy to the extent that it can be effective in political organizing and mass movement building, like I said earlier.
Yeah, right.
So I think we're done with the questions. Do you have any concluding remarks?
No concluding remarks. Like I hope that you have an opportunity to share this lecture with anybody who has a nonprofit, thinking about a nonprofit. Again, I know some of it could be a little bit triggering, but again, if you're in a nonprofit sector, then your goal was to help the people, supposedly. I know there are people who say, oh, I don't want to pay taxes, so we should start a nonprofit. I know there's some of y'all out there, but a lot of y'all are in this to help people. So if you're in there to help people, then you should know the origins of the space that you're in. Example, when law enforcement, when I do interactions with them for trainings where we're doing youth programs or whatever, the analogy or the example I always use is they don't understand why the community don't trust them. And I try to explain to them, well, you have a history of this kind of interaction with us. And then I ask them a basic question, do you trust politicians? They say no. I say, okay, you don't trust politicians, and you want the community to trust you. So you don't trust the people that make the laws that you enforce on those people, and you want them to trust you. And they like, their mind are blown, but it's like, yo, if you really want to do this work, then you should really study what the hell is going on. You should really understand the origins of who you are, what you are. So if you're in a nonprofit industrial complex, then understand the origins of it. And if you find out that your nonprofit is doing the same shit and not confronting the power structure, you need to stop it or challenge it or do something else. So like I said, we do have this lecture called Real. African-centered critique of African progress in America, that is a good litmus test for nonprofits. If you could see that, if my solution lining up with expiation and liberation, right? And so, if you ever want to have us do that for your organization or whoever, like we here, so you can definitely contact us. And then lastly, we are studying cooperative. What is it? Cooperative courage. So a book on the history of Black cooperatives in the country. We just now started, so if you want to join in with the study group,
this Sunday will be our first study group session on.
Yeah.
Is it cooperative courage? Is that
Yes, yeah, cooperative courage.
Nah, collective courage.
Huh?
Collective courage.
See, there we go. We only know the name of the book. Yeah, same thing. Collective, cooperative, tomato. Yeah, but so yeah, the first assignment is already up. We just reading the introduction. The book is free. We have a PDF, and then you're watching the video that we did on cooperative. So you want to join, hit us up and make sure you jump in the study group, so that we can all get politically, collectively literate and organized and active.
So we're that's our study group sessions are every Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay.
Yep.
Sundays at 8:30. For August, who do we have for Bab Talk?
So Bab Talk, we have Jared Ball coming up on August
the 20th.
August the 20th. So the author, which we quoted him here on The Myth of the Black Buying Power, he's a professor at Morgan State, and he's been causing a whole lot of ruckus for people that holding on to myths that are fallaciously ignorant. So that'll be a good dialogue. So our BAP talks, as Asafo said before, we like to focus on policy. So a lot of times we're always talking about different issues or whatever, but we like to bring in special people who really know their stuff about policies that directly impact our people, so that we can become more educated on policies. Because sometimes it's just a lack of understanding of how things are going, and how things impact you. And once you know that, you can educate other people to get organized to actually change those things. So every month we're trying to bring on people, and so we'll be able to fill it up. If you know anybody that you think that is interested, that really dope in those spaces, then you can suggest them, and we can interview them as well.
Yeah, and let me also say that next week I want to try to sneak in. I want us to do a. That's my son in the background, yo.
Leo want him, and he want to do some stuff.
So we want to do a real quick special barter and build special panel discussion on the cash bail system and how it is oppressive to people who are in poverty, and the money bail system, and how it hurts people in poverty and it benefits people who are wealthy. And so we're going to try to put together a special on that. I want to do it by next week. So everyone who's looking, our viewers right now, please keep an eye out for that. We'll try to put the flyer out at least by Monday. Okay. So we want to have the flyer out by Monday, and probably do the special panel on Wednesday or Thursday or something like that. So keep an eye out for that. So with that said, we appreciate everyone participating with your comments and your questions. We appreciate all of our viewers. If you want to reach out to us, you have our email address. You can come and find us on Facebook at Barter and Build Think Tank. You could come to our YouTube channel. So we're out here. So peace, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Y'all, peace.